About the ancient Romans we know a lot even from childhood. We heard about the greatest state in history where millions of people gathered at the Colosseum to be spectators at the gladiator fights where slave men fought to the death. Surely many of you remember the story where Nero staged the great fire that burned almost all of Rome. Only these are all myths that get us into trouble. But then where is the truth? That's what we'll try to find out in the next few minutes, by telling you about the most interesting and common misconceptions about ancient Rome. We'll start with geography. The biggest myth concerns the size of the Roman Empire. Many believe that it was the largest in history, but this is not true at all. If we believe today's data, then the size of the Roman Empire was almost 3,700,000 square kilometers. Only the size of the British Empire was more than 33 million square kilometers, and the size of the Mongol Empire is estimated by historians to be 24 million square kilometers, which almost corresponds to the size of the Russian Empire. Overall, by contemporary calculations, in the list of the largest states in history, the Roman Empire ranks just 27th, lying between the Mauryan Empire and the Fatimid Caliphate, which you have certainly never heard of. By the way, in history books you can very often find information about the practice of killing babies in the Roman Empire. It was considered a norm to kill the newborn. According to tradition, the newborn was given to the family priest who decided the future fate of the child, whether it would live on or be killed, especially when the child was born with some disorder and could hardly support itself in the future. Some historians believe that the practice of killing the newborn was considered to be mercy killing, where the purpose of killing could be seen as escape from suffering. For example, in the case of poor families who were unable to support the child. As horrific as the killing of a newborn child may not seem today, in ancient Rome people were not considered to have full rights at birth. They were given human status with time, at first with a name that was given only a few days after birth and after they could eat on their own. Other historians assume that the killing of children not only made life easier for some parents but also regulated the population in the empire so that there were an equal number of men and women in the state, but the latest research on the contrary rejects the myth about these killings and says that such a practice may have existed but on a much smaller scale than most scholars believe. Researchers have analyzed the bones of babies found in graves from the time of the conquest of Britain by the ancient Romans, and with the help of scanning technologies have a high probability of determining whether the newborn was born dead or alive. If the bones have made it to the present day intact, then the baby was born dead. If born alive, then the bones must have been affected by bacteria. Scientists using X-ray microtomography have studied the structure of the bones found and concluded that infant killing among the ancient Romans was not widespread. In their opinion, it would be correct to say about special cases, not mass killings. Another popular misconception is that the Roman Empire could not live without gladiatorial combat. In the past as today, popularity was not the quality, but the number of visitors. I'm sure you've heard of the Colosseum. Due to its very large size, it was possible to have around 50,000 people present at the fight. A lot even by modern standards, but in ancient Rome there was also the so-called Great Circus, built by Julius Caesar and accommodating from 150,000 to 250,000 spectators. The ancient Romans loved horse racing. One of the most popular representatives of horse racing in ancient Rome was a boy named Gaius Marius, who during his career managed to win about 35 million sestertii, which became known after his death because his tombstone was engraved with this amount. Thus, converted into modern currency, his racing income amounted to around $15 billion, making him the richest sportsman in history to date. Just to compare, Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo for a year receive somewhere around $100 million each. The life of gladiators is very well known from Ridley Scott's film, but it is very far from the truth. For example, the participation in the fights was not only by slaves, they were also common people. Plus to this, gladiators were not only men, but also women. Historians rarely talk about this, but there is direct evidence of women's participation in gladiatorial battles, only their names and successes are not known. For example, in 11 BC the Consulate Senate was founded, which forbade free-born women up to 20 years old and so men up to 25 years old to appear on the stage or arena of battle. 2 burials have also been found in Roman Britain, which was part of the Roman Empire, which archaeologists believe may have belonged to female gladiators. Plus, at all times people believed that gladiators regularly died in the arena, but this is only part of the truth. The point is that to be a real show, gladiator fights needed their own famous stage celebrities. Thus, gladiators were divided into several categories. Those who fought in the warm-up for the audience were indeed professional gladiators, and to raise such a gladiator takes a lot of time and money. Professional gladiators were trained in special schools called rudis and trained for 3 years. For 3 years the students of this school learned, ate and slept for free and finally go out to the arena and die in battle. That's why often the organizers of the game or the masters of the gladiators organized theatrical performances for the show with the participation of their best students. Gladiators knew how to strike with their swords so that you could see the blood flowing, but it was not a deep wound, so no fighter in the end was seriously injured. Hard to say if all these fights were not a simple scenario, most likely it was an analog of modern wrestling. Looks impressive, but actually all the moves are known by both wrestlers from before. But what if the wrestler lost to his opponent? In fact, often the fight simply stopped. The most productive gladiator for whom records have been kept was the Syrian Flamma, who lost a few fights, but it did not prevent him from continuing his career. The death of a gladiator in the arena was considered an accident and not a murder. But what about those with the most legendary thumbs up or thumbs down gesture that are so often rumored? Of course, modern cinema has introduced absolute knowledge of how the outcome of a duel was decided in ancient Rome, but this is just as far from the truth. In fact, the finger gesture meant swords down or cease fighting. It meant the losing gladiator had to live to have the opportunity to participate again. As I said earlier, gladiators rarely fought to the death because they were highly skilled specialists who trained long and hard. If they always killed them, then it was a senseless expenditure of money. Primarily, gladiator fights were based on endurance. The loser was the one who was injured or very tired. Sponsors rarely paid for fights with fatalities, and those fighters who were too badly wounded were killed with a hammer to the head to put them out of their misery. That's what the bones found in the gladiator cemetery tell of. There are also tragic pages in the history of ancient Rome whose authenticity is now being questioned by historians. You may have heard of the Great Fire that destroyed almost all of Rome, 11 out of 14 districts of inhabitants. This event did indeed take place, but from ancient times it was believed to have been started by Emperor Nero himself. It is said that when the emperor was told of the fire, he went outside and watched the city burn from a safe distance, while Nero was dressed in theatrical costume and playing the lyre and singing about the death of Troy. Modern historians doubt that Nero ordered the burning of his own capital because there are no clear records of the event, and archaeological finds do not give a clear enough answer. Scientists believe that Nero did not participate in that fire either, because fire is not logical and difficult to achieve. Rumors about the emperor's involvement did not come out of the wind. Nero is involved in the death of his own mother and wives, so he fit into the role of the culprit the locals who lost everything were looking for. John Drinkwater of Nottingham University, author of the biography of Emperor Nero, also believes this theory. A curious part of the story concerns the intimate side of the lives of the ancient Romans. In the modern world, it is considered that the wealthy nobility of ancient Rome participated in endless orgies and their whole life was a continuous debauchery. But where did such an opinion come from? Because neither in history books nor in the Leptics is there a word about such a lifestyle. It is known that during sex it was not allowed to undress completely, and among the laws of the empire there was such a law that forbade making love in the bright daylight, which generally contradicts the image of the rich nobility of the Roman Empire. But where do these rumors come from? The earliest records of wild orgies date back to the early Dark Ages when the Roman Empire fell apart due to internal problems. From here and we have to look for those who were useful to discredit the Roman Empire in front of its followers. These people were the early Christians who did their best to represent Roman culture in a bad light in front of its followers. In contrast to the First and Second World War and in the history of ancient Rome, there are many unknown parts, but that is why it is more interesting to dive into this atmosphere and find out what you did not know before.